Most founders think their biggest risk is building the wrong product, but the real nightmare is worse: getting stuck with a zombie startup. A zombie startup is neither dead nor alive. It's a startup that isn't growing and slowly burning time, money, and energy. And here's the scary part: most founders don't even realize they're in one until it's too late. They chase tiny markets, then spend months desperately searching for a new business model while their startup bleeds out. It nearly happened to me 3 times with my first 3 products: 6 Degrees, Boxcloud, and Cloudfire, which led me to develop the 7 stress tests and step-by-step playbook that I cover in my business model design challenge course. In this video, I'll show you how to use these stress tests to find out if your startup is a zombie startup and bulletproof your idea before you build it out. Here's how to approach stress testing. Before taking on a project like building a 100-story skyscraper, you wouldn't rush into construction without a blueprint or architectural sketch. The same is true with early-stage startups. But even with an architectural blueprint, you still wouldn't start constructing the skyscraper without first stress testing your design to ensure it meets all your required aesthetics and engineering specifications. The same is also true with startup ideas. Now, in their exuberance for actions, too many founders skip business model designing and stress testing and prematurely rush into building their product, and the result is often a zombie startup. Products that work perfectly, but business models that are fundamentally broken. Companies stuck in limbo, not dead enough to quit, but not alive enough to thrive either. So let's jump into the 7 stress tests that prevent zombie startups. I'll start by telling you about Cloudfire's first business model collapse. After building one zombie product, 6 Degrees, I thought I'd learned my lesson, and Cloudfire was going to be different. It was going to be a beautiful photo-sharing platform that solved a real problem for busy parents. The product worked, the user experience was great, early feedback was positive, everything seemed to be working, until I tried pitching it to an investor friend who asked me one simple question: can you show me how the business model math works? When we ran the numbers, the business model fell apart in just under 5 minutes. That's when I realized you can build a perfect product with a fundamentally broken business model. The product might work beautifully, but the business model will slowly bleed to death. I ended up drastically pivoting my product to a completely different customer segment. The worst part is that I could have easily avoided wasting 9 months building a flawed business model had I stress tested my idea sooner. That's what got me thinking about business model design and stress testing, and how I developed these 7 stress tests. These are the exact stress testing dimensions I use in my business model design challenge, so let's walk through them. The first stress test is mission. This is where you define your non-negotiable minimum success criteria for your startup. Here's how to think about this. All startup ideas will easily consume years of your life. If you were going to commit the next 3 years on any idea, what would be the minimum outcome that would make that journey worthwhile? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Now, most founders never define what success actually looks like, and that is why they end up wandering in circles. If you remember Steve from past videos, he had a big, bold vision to build the next metaverse platform. But his actions were not aligned with his mission. He was working part-time, building slowly and carefully. There was a fundamental misalignment between his big Ready Player One movie-type ambition and his weekend hobby project. Sure enough, he got a rude wake-up call when a fast-moving, well-funded competitor emerged in his space. That's when he realized if you want to build the next billion-dollar platform, you can execute like a lifestyle business. Through mission stress testing, he defined his minimum success criteria and leveled up his validation strategy. Stress test number 2 is clarity. Getting others to see what you see is the first battle. Steve struggled for months trying to convince co-founders, investors, and potential customers on his idea. This is where tools like Lean Canvas helped him distill his big vision into a clear and concise one-page business model. He went from 47 confusing PowerPoint slides to one clear Lean Canvas and a 5-minute pitch that anyone could understand. Once you have a clear and concise business model, the next step isn't rushing to build it, but rather stress testing it against several more customer and market dimensions first. The next one is desirability. This stress test tests your idea for customer demand by asking, will customers want your product? Now, many founders over-index here on product features and demos, but you can get a customer to try your product or even agree to see your demo unless you have a compelling promise or unique value proposition. That's what the desirability stress test helps you refine. Good unique value propositions don't lead with cool features, but clear, specific, and familiar problems your customers want to solve. Using this stress test, Steve shifted from pitching cool tech features to nailing must-solve problems architects struggle with on a daily basis. That's how he was able to book 15 calls with qualified architects in just 2 weeks. Now, stress test number 4 is viability. This is where you stress test your product's pricing model and evaluate whether your business model can actually hit your mission goals. In other words, you test whether your idea is worth pursuing in the first place. Yes, this is the stress test that led to my drastic Cloudflare pivot 9 months after I launched. Unlike me, Steve was able to course correct his business model much faster. He initially put down $50 a month for his product on his first lean canvas, but after running this test, he ended up increasing his pricing model not by 10x, but 100x to $5,000 a month. Now, this seemed a little bit absurd at first, but he ended up closing 12 out of 15 architects just a couple of weeks later. The key takeaway here is that pricing isn't some arbitrary number. It's one of the riskiest assumptions in your business model that can make or break your idea. The next stress test is feasibility. This stress test helps you design a stage-based systematic launch plan or go-to-market strategy for your idea. When it comes to product launches, many founders rush into big bang launches and try to go fast on everything. With an early or unproven product or MVP, this is often a recipe for just getting lost faster, or worse, running free perpetual pilots that never go anywhere. Steve's advisor, Mary, warns him against the pitfalls of doing these kinds of uncontrolled public launches and instead shows him how to apply the feasibility stress test to build a 10x stage launch strategy. She helps him build a traction roadmap with realistic milestones and turn his big vision into a series of achievable 90-day goals and cycles. Okay, so these 3 stress tests, desirability, viability, and feasibility, help you focus on key customer, market, and execution risks. The next 2, timing and defensibility, are things that most founders never really think much about until later down the road, but I find that your starting idea will get a lot stronger if you stress test them a lot earlier in the journey. So let's move on to timing. Timing is an interesting wild card. Studies have shown that the same idea with the same team can succeed or fail depending on how well it was timed. Now, most people dismiss timing as luck, but that is a false belief. There are 3 specific markers that all well-timed ideas have: inflections, impact, and insights. These 3 things can be stress tested with an idea to see how well it is timed. Now, most founders like Steve live in the future, which causes them to rush into products too early into market. But when we go through massive technology inflections like we are with AI right now, not all markets will react to that technology inflection in the same acceptance or with the same speed. This stress test helps you find the right entry point for your idea that is timed perfectly for adoption. Now, the final stress test in the framework is defensibility or moat building. The reason you want to start thinking about this early on is twofold. First, anything worth copying will be copied. What this means is that your product's features or design alone is seldom enough to defend against copycats and competition. And second, building true unfair advantages takes time and requires deliberate strategy and effort. Like a giant oak tree, the best time to plant seeds for it is now. In Steve's case, he recognizes that he will need to rely on a scalable growth loop to realize his big vision, and identifies network effects as the thing that could materialize into a defensible, unfair advantage. Instead of treating this passively, he treats it like any business model risk and starts testing it right away with his first batch of customers. Over the next several months, he refines the mechanics further to build a massive user-generated library of reusable 3D assets that help every architect using his platform do their jobs a whole lot better. This creates platform stickiness and eventually turns into his real deterrent against competition. Okay, so there you have it. These are the 7 dimensions of stress testing in the Business Model Design Challenge. Once you learn each stress test is designed to take just minutes, not months, to administer and complete. Now, let me show you how these 7 stress tests systematically transform Steve's entire approach. Before systematic stress testing, Steve had a vague Ready Player One mission, a 47-slide confusing presentation that nobody understood, technology-focused features instead of customer problems, a $50 a month pricing that broke his business model math, no clear path from idea to execution, poor understanding of market timing, and zero competitive differentiation strategy. After the 7 dimensions of stress testing, Steve ended up with a clear $10 million ARR goal for his minimum success criteria. I want to qualify that this is a goal that was specific to his idea. Your mileage could vary. Not all ideas have to be at this scale. He also had a 1-page lean canvas and a pitch anyone could understand, a customer pain-focused value proposition, a $5,000 a month viable pricing model with clear paths to scale, a 90-day systematic execution roadmap with measurable milestones, perfect timing validation for his VR market concept, and finally, he had a platform network effect, which was going to become his unfair advantage story. The entire 7 dimensions of stress testing took Steve less than 30 days to implement instead of the typical 12 to 18 months of expensive trial and error building. Now, if you're an early stage founder, either already working on an idea or looking for one, the BMD Challenge can help. It's the same step-by-step roadmap I've used to launch my later, more successful products to millions of people, but instead of learning this through expensive failures like I did, you get the systematic approach from day one. If you'd like to learn more about the program, check out the link in the description below. So let me preview the next week's video for you, which is going to be quite timely. Since AI is all the rage these days, I get tons of questions about how AI changes any of the principles and frameworks that I teach. That's the topic I'm going to cover next week. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.